up, my friends? My name is Electro Sweaters, and one of my personal favorite hobbies is putting an astronomical amount of work on myself for no reason. An example of this? Well, strap in, because I took a break from my characters for nearly 6 full months, and I've grown just unattached enough to want to redesign all of them. And this one's a doozy, because I'm starting with characters I made when I was 14 years old. This video is going to be embarrassing. Let's get started. So, immediate introduction into who these horrible monstrosities of freshman year's creations were. They're nymphs. If you're a Percy Jackson kid like me, you probably already know what that is, but for anyone else who went outside after the age of 12, think of them like druids. They're magical creatures from Greek mythology who live in plants and help out the gods. That's all you need to know from the base mythos, because other than that, I did fuck all with them. Originally, my nymphs were a truly awful looking combination of a bug, animal, and plant, with animal parts just slapped on with no rhyme or reason, and wings which I swear in the actual years I worked on a comic featuring these guys maybe got used, I don't know, twice. Adding on to that, what was nymph culture like? No idea. I know I had some basic plans that we'll get into later in the redesign, but it was never explored in any capacity, so I guess plant cat boys it was. Redesign number 1. Meet Dennis, the main character of the original story and the youngest sibling of these nymphs. Of course, being the main character, he had to have the worst design. He was a dragon fruit, and I would like to defend myself. He was not a dragon fruit because I thought it was fun and quirky. He was a dragon fruit because he's based on this plush I got at an anime convention in 2018, which somehow sounds worse. And he was designed strangely, to say the least. Let's start from the head. Of course, right off the bat, 1, he had heterochromia, because 14, and 2, he has near radioactive green hair, which I swear to God may be alive. 3, butterfly antenna, 4, shaped freckles, and 5, furry ears, because his face really needed as much going on as humanly possible, and it only gets worse from here, ladies and gents. Yes, he is wearing a 3-piece suit. I could not give you any possible explanation as to what was going through my mind to make a man who is literally a physical embodiment of nature wear a suit. Also, his tail is like half bald, and as a cherry on top, he has angel dust titties. Something compelled me to give this man just a scoop of fur on his chest, and I could not tell you why. But what does he have going for him besides his design? Story-wise? Near nothing. I made the story in the back of my mom's car eating Pizza Hut based on one singular scene I wanted to do that I never even got to. It was an incredibly bare-bones romance story, and he was a fairly generic, spunky, upbeat main character, but there was one thing that really stood out to me during this redesign in his backstory that I really focused on. Dennis was originally planned to work for Dionysus. This was never explored because of the aforementioned not getting to the one scene I actually planned out, but this tiny piece gave me enough to make a completely new story, which will hopefully be better than the one I could make 3 years ago. So, meet the new Dennis. Instead of Dionysus, he is now a worker for the god Hermes. Essentially, he's a fancy messenger. Nymphs in this new story can be likened to demigods, I guess. They typically are given powers from their patron gods and are therefore able to carry out duties of gods throughout the entire earth. Most nymphs have pretty basic powers, but Dennis was pretty much a child prodigy and was very powerful. So powerful, in fact, that Hermes decided to get rid of him. You know, because in typical Greek god fashion, any implication that someone is better than you is an act of treason. So, Dennis is assigned to go to Earth and deliver messages there and study the cultures of other creatures, and is totally not being kicked off of Olympus at all. After that, Dennis goes to live with his sister, blah blah blah, meets his love interest, who will be in a different video if this one does well, wink wink, and they have to like deal with necromancers and some demon bullshit, while Dennis just wants to deliver his goddamn packages. I think the story's fun. Of course, I'll have to flesh out a lot of it if I ever want to pursue it, but it's definitely an improvement. Alright, now on to his redesign before I actually run out of footage. First of all of my nymphs have patterns and eye sculpting shit, don't question it. It's to make them look like flowers, and it kind of gives them a more magic-y feel. You'll also see wings on their arms and legs, because nymphs can shrink very small to fit into plants, and when they're like that, they use them to kinda fall with style. Also, because of the fact they can transform, they have colored eyes, which is a motif I use to show that a character in my stories can shapeshift. You'll also see a lot of yellow and green in Dennis's pattern and eyes, because he is no longer a dragon fruit, he is a honeysuckle. I chose a honeysuckle for some symbolizing reason that I can't remember right now, but I'm sure it'll be up on screen. I also gave him black hair instead of green because I was tired of the anime main character syndrome. His new hairstyle I just kinda yoinked from a pic crew, and that kinda meant I had no idea how to draw it. I think I figured it out eventually, and I really like the high fantasy look of it, so I hope it looks good. He's also rocking a tiny beard, and is therefore my first character I've ever drawn with facial hair. For his outfit, he has this furred jacket, which I think is called an aviator's jacket, but I refuse to look that up, and if I'm wrong, no I'm not, you are. And of course, course, in the middle, he has a giant patch of pattern to reference his previous angel dust titty syndrome. He has 2 bags, one for money and one for packages, and I think we can just assume the latter does the Mary Poppins thing. And finally, he has some Roman sandals to reference his home on Olympus. I tried to give him a much more fantasy feel than I usually do for characters, as well as giving him a lot of gold and fancy parts to his outfits to reference the fact that he is a nymph of pretty high social stature. It can also be assumed that his parents and family are just kinda wealthy in general. And well, that's Dennis done. On to the middleest Miette sibling, Zarya. She's actually my oldest still active character. I first made her when I was like 12, which means unfortunately she was a Homestuck OC. She was a great blood named Zephic, and I'm sorry to say I kept that name after she became a nymph. This is why I am being punished every day by people telling me my art style looks like I used to be a Homestuck fan artist. Anyway, Zarya was originally a side character, and she was a nymph based off of a plum. Honestly, for what a nymph was at the time, her design wasn't the worst. It's by no means great, but it's one of the better ones. The hair's definitely a why. It was supposed to be white because Dennis had naturally white hair from the dragon fruit thing, but honey, do genetics really matter when you're a 7-foot-tall manifestation of a plum? Most of the criticisms I have already said in previous parts, but her wings. Girl, what are those? Why are they circular? She looks like she strapped Party City fairy wings to herself. For why? Someone in my Discord said she looked like a Littlest Pet Shop character, and they were 100% right. Zarya didn't have a lot going for her in the original comics, and she was a side character and mainly just a voice of reason. But she did kind of have a spin-off backstory from the main comic. I only ever wrote a baseline for it, but the main idea was that she had a girlfriend who was meant to die in some way and be reincarnated, and this gave Zarya like a fear of the underworld in the main story. I don't know. Freshman year I was going through it. But, I mean, the necromancy thing did inspire the current storyline, so not all that bad. She now has a lot more active of a role in the story, but she also has a huge fear of abandonment, which is not great because she's the only sibling living on Earth. Her design took so long to get right. I made like 30 design sketches and even a finished design that I promptly decided was incredibly incoherent and looked horrible. My friend even generously helped by designing their own version of her. You can see it on screen right now. It's super cute, right? You'd think I use it right away. No, I couldn't figure out how to draw it. So I took maybe 3 of the improvements they made and just scrapped all of the old design and made a completely new one. But as it goes, the more pain I go through while designing a character, the better they'll look automatically. So instead of a plum, Zarya is now an allium. And I love her. Look at her. Look at her little ear puffs and face pattern. She's got a 60s themed outfit and the back of her hair is supposed to look like the flower of an allium. And if she walks around on dirt, she leaves plants everywhere. I love her. Though it did take me until the final stage of her design to realize that an allium plant is an onion. She'll be fine. Pretty people don't smell. On to the oldest Miette sibling, who is not Toph from Avatar, I promise. This is Tegan. They used to be named Taeyeon because she was unfortunately also a Homestuck OC. But now she still looks like a Homestuck character. Is this just Meduna? We don't need to talk about that. In her last design, she was a 50s themed wine grape nymph and was supposed to be like slowly poisoned by the alcohol in it, I think? I don't know how that worked, but now she's an Owlander flower, which is actually a poisonous plant. I wanted to make her experience more physical effects from this rather than, you know, just being a little sleepy one time. Most obviously, she is now legally blind. She still has some vision, but about a fourth what it would be normally. So she has a seeing eye dog named Rhubarb. In addition, her body is physically weaker, particularly her joints. She's normally seen wearing finger braces to alleviate pain, and in some outfits can be seen with a leg brace as well, as her joints are prone to becoming dislocated. The pattern on her skin is also noticeably more desaturated and spaced out than other nymphs. Her horns also don't grow in right, so she has 2 pairs, one very short pair, and one pair which is long enough to wrap around the entirety of her head. Day to day though, none of that really bothers them. Something they've kept throughout every single redesign they've ever gotten is that they really enjoy roller skating. Plus, she's outwardly punk, which in this universe kind of means that she really does not like the gods. Speaking of punk, this design is actually one of my personal favorites from this bunch. Their outfit has a lot of bright neon colors and asymmetricality, which I really find appealing in designs. Plus, she's got these roller skate shoes, which exist in real life, and I really want them, but they're like $200. A much smaller part of her design that I really enjoy is her teeth. I used a lot of green and yellow in her design because she's based off a yellow Olander. She's got some pink still from regular Olander, but mostly it's yellow. Even yoinked the green hair from Dennis's original design. And that hair goes really well with her shirt, which I think is my favorite piece of clothing I have ever designed. I don't often hype up my work, but I think the see-through pink with the X's on the chest was really a galaxy brain move from me. And for the final character, you've seen her before. She's the last nymph. The background character people enjoyed so much, she now appears in half my stories, and Tegan's best friend. it's Jolene! And as previously stated, Jolene was originally a background character. She was a River Styx worker who helped new souls cross to the other side. But like literally, she passes dead souls across the river. And none of that has changed at all. She just has a surfboard now. She was actually redesigned first because she's a supporting character in a way higher priority comic of mine. So basically, I had to play evolution and work from a fish to figure out what the other nymphs were gonna end up looking like. So the actual real reason they all have patterns is just because Jolene had a pattern because she's a fish. And we don't need to acknowledge that, we'll just call it part of the character design process. Now, as I said, part of the reason she got a redesign is because originally, people liked her a lot when she first showed up in the story. Surely, that must mean her original design was great. The best out of all of them. Amazing. Well, no, of course not. That would make too much sense, wouldn't it? No, she's also a furry. I apparently didn't know how to design a goddamn water version of a species, so I just removed the bug parts and shortened the tail. You know, because a giant furry tail is exactly what you need under the water. No fish parts whatsoever on this baby. I was going wild. After doing some drafting and figuring out how I wanted her ears and patterning to look, I hopped straight into doing her hair. I have been sitting here for over a year, seething over her hair, wanting to do a redesign. Do I know what that was supposed to be? No. You know why? Because I took it right off May from My Hero Academia. My reasoning was apparently I thought it could kind of look like it was water droplets. No, it doesn't. No, it won't. I was just putting shit on people's heads. It had to be stopped. So I chopped off most of it, mainly to uncover her neck, and I decided to make it look like her hair's been curled into individual segments. I acknowledge this still wouldn't work underwater, but most styles wouldn't, so cut me some slack. I can use a magic excuse one time. I made her mostly red and black because she's a goth bitch, and pretty much kept her entire swimsuit thing because, honestly, it fit pretty well. All I really did was add a little band in the middle to section all of the black and tie in the red a little bit more, but I actually did change her body type pretty dramatically. She's now way shorter, she's 4'11" in fact. She's also visually more muscular, which makes sense for someone who is constantly swimming and surfing. I don't really have much more to add, but I would like to point out that her surfboard is incredibly cute and has signatures from all of her friends on it, and it inspired me to do so much more work on reference sheets by adding all of the characters' items, and I didn't even get to talk about most of them in this video, and that sucks. But luckily, their reference sheets are up on screen right now. Oh my god, that's so cool and so neat. How did she do that? Yeah, it's crazy. I know. You should read all of them because I took a shit ton of time on them. And this video turned out way shorter than I expected. And I'm really mad about it because fashion design is one of my favorite things to talk about. And guess what I didn't get to talk about in this video? So yeah, there's 20 extra outfits in total for these characters that I did not get to talk about. So please, if anything in these references catches your eye, just comment about it. I want to talk about it. 20 extra designs. I didn't even get to talk about Zarya's entire ball gown. I swear to God, I'll make an extra video about this. Speaking of that, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more of this specific type of content from me, please leave a comment, like on the video. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. All those things really do help me, especially as a smaller channel. And I have a lot of footage saved up for these types of speed paints, and that would make such a huge difference in my workload. I could actually like relax once a week. So please, any feedback is greatly appreciated. And with that all said, see you guys for the next video.